You already probably know that Spanish, like many other languages, has thousands of words. But did you know that the average Spanish speaker only uses a fraction? What if you could unlock your potential by learning the right vocabulary fast? In this video, I'm going to show you 8 simple and cool ways to increase your vocabulary fast. I'm also going to share with you my key and secret weapon to learn vocabulary effectively. We're also going to talk about a critical mistake that is slowing down your progress and that you're highly likely making. And I'm also going to provide you with resources to get you started. Okay, so let's start with number 1. The learning hack that I see everywhere and that makes me so mad. Learn as much vocabulary as you can. Seriously? No! To be effective and actually be able to communicate in Spanish, you need to learn relevant words. So when learning Spanish, vocabulary is important. However, you need to learn vocabulary relevant to your life and your interests. I mean, why would you want to learn a word that is not important to you? Also, relevant vocabulary is vocabulary that you are going to practice frequently, which is going to help your retention. Okay, when we follow that tip of learn as many words as you can, you are increasing vocabulary, but you're learning passive vocabulary. Those are words that you are not going to use at all. What we want to do is to focus on active vocabulary. These are the words that you are actually going to use in your daily life. Take this example. Suppose you're learning Spanish to talk to your coworkers and you work in construction. So in that case, your active vocabulary is learning the different names of the tools, learning verbs that help you talk about the construction or about the projects that you guys are doing. A lot of my students panic at the thought of not knowing a word. Daniela, if I don't know a word, how am I supposed to understand what other people are saying? This leads me to the second technique. Infer the meaning of a word that you don't know. So inferring not only saves you brain power because you don't have to memorize thousands of words, but it also increases your comprehension. When you're inferring instead of memorizing, you get the chance to decide if a word is relevant to you. If something looks important, okay, I'm going to put it in my list. If a word is not that important, I'm just going to ignore it for now. Okay, so how am I going to infer? We are going to use the context. The context is going to give you all the clues you need to know the meaning of a word. Look at the sentence right here. El bebé toma leche en su biberón. It's very likely that you don't know what biberón is, right? Okay, so let's infer. El bebé toma leche. What do babies use to drink? Not a glass, right? Because that will be irresponsible and a little bit dangerous. Babies use baby bottles, biberón. Is this more important to you? No. Okay, next. Suppose you and I are walking in my neighborhood and I say to you, ay, mi abuelo vive en la siguiente manzana. Is your grandpa friends with SpongeBob SquarePants? No. Let me stop you right there. No. Manzana in this context is not referring to apple. Let's look at the context again. We're walking in my neighborhood. Manzana. Is that a house? No, that's casa. Is that a calle? No, that's street. Will that be block? Perfect. Suppose that I open the fridge, I take this container, and after I open it, I go and tell you, ay, la comida se echó a perder. You might not know what se echó a perder means, but after seeing my face and smelling the food, you understand that the food went bad and we cannot eat it anymore. So the next technique is finding patterns. Many words follow a pattern, and if we're able to identify those patterns, our vocabulary is going to increase quicker and easier. Let me give you an example. In Spanish, words that end with ría refer to stores where you can find services or products. For example, zapatería, that's a shoe store. Panadería, that's a bakery. What do you think carnicería is? The butcher shop. Also, you need to pay attention to the patterns between languages. Take English for example. Words that end in T in English are going to become that in Spanish. City, ciudad. Identity, identidad. reality, realidad, curiosity, curiosidad. I have already took the time to find these patterns for you and I have compiled them in my Spanish learning kit. You can find the link in the description so you can get those patterns and start boosting your vocabulary. So when it comes to learning vocabulary, a lot of people focus on learning nouns. Pared, cabello, cara, camisa. Those words are okay. But if you want to boost your vocabulary and your conversations, you need to pay special attention to verbs and expressions. Verbs are the words that help you talk about actions and states. Not only are key to conversations because they are the core of the sentence, but you can also use them to identify the meaning or usage of other words. For example, ¿cómo se dice? ¿Qué significa? ¿Cómo se usa? Prioritize verbs that are important to your situation, but also verbs that help you talk about daily life actions. In the description, you are going to find a link to a list of the most important verbs in Spanish. Expressions are key because not only they help you sound more natural, but you can also use them to convey your ideas more accurately. Many Spanish teachers say that you need to wait a little bit longer to be a little bit more advanced in your Spanish to start learning expressions. I completely disagree. Most Spanish speakers, they're going to speak the way they speak, and this is using expressions. So make sure you start learning some of these phrases and start using them. What you also want to do is practice conscious immersion. When you're listening to music or watching a movie in Spanish, I want you to focus on finding key verbs and expressions. Pay attention to how and when these people are using this vocabulary, and also check the pronunciation so you're able to start pronouncing these terms correctly. Also, make sure that you learn vocabulary for the dialect you're focusing on. Let me give you an example of how conscious immersion can help you. English is not my mother tongue. And a mistake that I kept making was saying something like, you don't know nothing. I was transporting double negatives, which we use in Spanish, into English, something that you guys don't do. I did a lot of exercises, but I couldn't fix this mistake until I saw it in Game of Thrones. You know nothing, Jon Snow. So every time that I want to say, you don't know nothing, I remember this phrase, which I learned through conscious immersion, and I use it to avoid this mistake. Interiorizing vocabulary is easier if you're able to explain that word or expression to others. If you have a friend that is also learning Spanish, you should share the vocabulary and expressions that you're learning with her or him. Make sure that you explain what those words are and how they are supposed to be used. This is going to help you practice your vocabulary, but also gain a deeper understanding of those terms. Make sure that if your friend is also sharing vocabulary with you, that you prioritize the words that are relevant to your situation. So we finally got to my secret weapon to learn vocabulary, the opposite method. Let me show you how this works. So once we have identified a relevant word, I'm also going to learn the opposite. For example, prende la tele, apaga la tele. Juan se va en la mañana y llega en la noche. Ya me subí al camión, pero ¿dónde me bajo? Este celular está muy caro, quiero uno más barato. Many of the actions that we do in daily life situations, they have an opposite. Think about it. If you learn a word and that word has an opposite, you're likely going to need that opposite at some point. I mean, if you turn the TV on, si prendes la tele, you need to turn it off. Tienes que apagarla. This is what the opposite method allows you to do. Once you learn vocabulary, you need to start applying those words in your conversations. If you don't have a friend that is also learning Spanish, you can start writing sentences or small stories using the words that you just learned. I want you to focus on real life environments. So for example, let's go back to that example of learning Spanish for the workplace. Those sentences that you're going to write need to relate to that environment. This not only allows you to apply those words in a real life situation, but it's also going to boost your confidence because you know those sentences, so when you apply them, you are going to feel better about yourself. You can also take quizzes to practice a specific vocabulary. In the description, I left a link to the top 85 verbs so you can practice their conjugations. So I want to connect today's challenge with something that we saw through the video. I want you to choose 3 words or expressions that are very useful in your daily life, and I want you to explain to us how you use these words. I'm going to start. One of the words that I use a lot is boy. I'm coming. I use this expression a lot when there is a delivery guy knocking at my door. Boy. The other expression that I use a lot too is tendrás. Tendrás is a polite way to ask somebody in the grocery store if they have something. ¿Tendrás leche? And finally, I also use a lot me da gusto. Me da gusto means it makes me happy. For example, your comments me dan muchísimo gusto. Leave your expressions in the comments so we all can learn from them. So to practice conscious immersion, you can take this same lesson in my Spanish immersion channel. I'm going to leave you that link in the description as well. And remember to check the different resources that I left you so you can start working and increasing your vocabulary faster and easier. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, it would really help me if you can hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe because I'm going to be sharing expressions that native speakers use in daily life situations. Espero verte pronto. Adiós.